Welcome to Building Science at the LP SmartSide plant in Minnesota. Nothing is left to chance here. Anything from the amount of resin used to the size of the wood flake. Everything is done for a very specific reason. With 500,000 feet per day on a 3/8 basis going out this door. Now that's almost enough to side 167 homes per day. Here's how they do it. So Lance, your process for LP SmartSide starts right out here with these logs in the background and coming through here into the log pond. Take us through that process.
The logs are first harvested, they're brought in here, they're stored in a log yard. We bring it into the cartridges and the wood's conditioned for roughly about 7 hours. It's conveyed into the plant through conditioning ponds. It conditions the wood so by the time it gets inside it's soft and ready to be processed into wood strands. The bark is removed. We use the bark as a byproduct of the process to actually heat our plant and heat our press. And then the good strands continue upstream through the process. After it's debarked, then it goes through a process where the logs are shaved down into strands. The 9-ton disc rotating at about 360 RPM with razor sharp knives. Any of these logs in a matter of a couple seconds will be reduced down to small strands about the size of a business card. After they're made, then they go through a drying process. They're entering the drying process at about 50% moisture. They come out of the process around 6% moisture.
Did you know the drying process of these wood flakes starts at 1400 degrees Fahrenheit? That's hot enough to burn a diamond. So why doesn't it burn these?
When the wet flakes drop into the inlet to this drum, it's approximately on average like 1400 degrees Fahrenheit. Obviously the flakes aren't at that temperature for more than a second or two, and they kind of flash through and move through the drum, and as the drum rotates and circulates and the moisture is flashed off of these flakes, by the time it gets to the outlet side, it's in that 260 to 270 degree temperature.
The velocity of a strand, imagine a business card, if you drop it in the wind, it's going to immediately take off when it's suspended. That's what's happening to those strands inside. As soon as they enter that drum, they take off and they're heading south. And then they're going to head back down. So they're moving at a very fast velocity as they go through this drum. After the strands are dried, they're stored in dry bins. And then from the dry bins, they get conveyed up to our blending system. The blending system uses basically something similar to a tumble dryer. So the strands are suspended in air, and as they're suspended in air, they're coated with resin, wax, and zinc borate, and they're thoroughly blended together. So you have each strand treated with the right amount of resin, the right amount of wax, and the right amount of zinc borate as a wood preservative to protect it against fungal decay and termites.
So this is the forming line. What's happening here?
The forming line is essentially a conveyor where we lay up the mat. So there's a bottom layer, quarter layer, top layer. The bottom layer, we orient the strands in the long direction of the product to make it strong in the long direction, to give it that strength, so when you pick up a 16-foot piece, it's strong enough and it doesn't break. It's rigid. The core layer is more of a random orientation, and then the top layer again is in the long direction. The core gives it strength in the cross direction. Now that's not as important as the long direction, because the majority of the products that this plant makes are actually 16 feet long and narrow. So we want the majority of the strength to be in the long direction.
All right, so now the mat has one more key phase, and that's the overlay.
Yeah, it's all laid up, oriented in the right direction, and then it gets overlaid with a primed overlay that's saturated with resin, and also has some resin attached to the bottom of it to really give it a bite to the wood. Right. So it really ties the whole matrix or the whole composition together. We've got it all put together at this point. Now we just got to put it in the oven and compact it down to its desired thickness.
So you got 10 presses here. This is a very key part of the process. You're taking it from here to here at this point.
This is a critical step in the process. Without this step, everything else would be a waste of time. So we have about 10 flights here. The mat is 8 feet wide, roughly 16 feet long. What we're doing is we're filling up this cage. This is going to be injected into the press, and then it's going to be pressed, compacted under very intense heat and pressure for several minutes until the resins are fully cured and that entire matrix or that entire substrate is tied together, durably tied together. Now it comes out of the press. Now you've got a long, wide sheet. The edges get trimmed off, and then it goes into a final process where it's ripped into lap siding, or it can be ripped into trim. The edges are coated with an acrylic primer, and once that process is complete, it goes into a packaging station, gets packaged, and sent to our warehouse to be delivered to our customers.
We just looked at a process that incorporates a high-grade exterior resin, a zinc borate preservative, and a pre-primed overlay. Next time, we show you how those products intersect and impact the overall durability and longevity of the siding product. For Building Science, I'm Adam Grubb.